Dan Rubenstein, we are back for part
We are.
of our March Q&A episode. Go back and listen to part 1, which we dropped on Tuesday. We, of course, got a number of questions from all around the Verballerhood, from out on Patreon, all the social platforms, even email. We did not have enough time to go through all of them on our first episode. So, alas, here we are for part 2, my friend. How are you?
I appreciate you trying to bend time, even though we are wearing the exact same clothes as we did if you're watching this on youtube.com/@solidverbal. It's okay. I'm good. I'm still good. I'm still excited. I'm still enthusiastic about all of these messages and enthusiastic about all of your answers, Ty.
I am as well. Again, we got a bunch of questions from the Verballerhood. We do our best to pay homage once a month here in the off season. Everybody who sends in questions, we got a bunch of good ones. Let's start part 2 out on Patreon. Dan, this is a hot button question. We have addressed it here and there over the course of our podcast. This one from Sean. For those must-have 2-point plays or fourth down conversions, what are some of the best and worst plays in your opinion? I believe Dan refers to these as Excelsior plays, Dan.
Yeah. Excelsior is more, what does your 4-minute offense down 2 look like? That you're stringing together plays that set each other up and that you look like you have a plan as you need to march down the field in high leverage situations. But yes, obviously, fourth down conversion plays and 2-point conversion plays. I mean, there are specific examples of plays, and there's just sort of play designs in general that I appreciate. I think at this point in the modern era, Philly special is that's the huge moment, standard. Easy to pull off, as you know, Nick Foles had nobody near him for an easy catch for a huge moment touchdown in the Super Bowl. I think that is the gold standard right now in terms of like a specific instance in which it doesn't have to be a trick play, but in that moment, that was a play that was so easy to execute that you can't look in any other direction to me. So,
well, the Philly special is, I think, the gold standard, and that definitely has brand recognition. Let's say at this point, everybody knows what that is. I think before that, in a college football sense, the Tebow jump pass. Tebow jump pass.
Any jump pass, but Tim Tebow's was the best. Yeah.
Tim Tebow, I think, popularized it just because he was such a battering ram when he had the football.
Mm-hmm.
But that play, we were convinced that they were going to try something like that with Riley Leonard down the stretch. We didn't really see it. But the jump pass, especially in like a 2-point scenario, a fourth down scenario, that to me has always been like a college football equivalent of that gold standard.
Yes.
What I would say is on the polar opposite side of the spectrum, the fade.
Yeah, of course.
I hate the fade. The fade on fourth and short, the fade usually down around the goal line is just, I would say, forever the most frustrating thing that I see. Now, if you've got a once-in-a-generation talent at wide receiver, if you've got Jeremiah Smith,
sure,
it's a little bit more defensible. But even still, it feels like a much lower percentage play than just like scheme up a rub play over the middle to the tight end, or something that works a slot receiver across the formation and, you know, he gets caught up in traffic and emerges completely uncovered on the other side. That seems to be, I think, a much better tack than just throwing the stupid fade play.
I love teams that are really good at rub routes, that have receivers that, even though their only point of this person being on the field is to run into a corner who is trying to guard some sort of out pattern, that they are selling the fact that they are trying to just, I'm just sitting in the zone right here, and I happen to be right in and I'm looking at the quarterback, and my hands are up like I'm hoping for a pass. I always appreciate teams who are skilled at running the rub and not obvious at running the rub route. I always appreciate that. I always appreciate a play action play that is it's sold so effectively that the offensive line is told that it's a run, where it's like a quarterback keeper and runs completely untouched. I think it was Alex Smith against the Saints.
Yeah, and the camera gets fooled.
The camera gets fooled. The offensive linemen are just expecting some running back to barrel into the line behind them, and so you get that like naked boot on a high leverage 4th and short moment. I always appreciate that being sold really, really well. And I want to say, was it Joe Staley who was out running ahead for for Alex Smith in those moments? I always appreciate that. I always appreciate a well-run, basic, eligible offensive lineman receiver. Not a trick play necessarily, but you line up heavy and one of the linemen is declared eligible before the play. I like that a whole bunch.
Yeah.
I always appreciate it, and again, maybe this is too 49er heavy, that like Kyle Shanahan always has just like, oh, it's 4th and 1. Here's enough misdirection to open up a fullback for an easy 4.5 yards on 4th and 1. There's always that. I always just appreciate eye candy opening up something easy to execute. And again, the fade is the complete counter to this.
Complete counter.
Those typically, I remember going back to the Chip Kelly era at Oregon, he would run what was then affectionately called the zone read option, which was essentially a triple option.
Right.
But out of the shotgun where a quarterback gets to decide, if it's a lighter box, just give it to LaMichael James or Kenyon Barner or whatever. But you run with 2 running backs out there in the backfield. And then if the quarterback keeps it, 1, you have somebody chasing the give guy. And then 2, the quarterback can either keep it or pitch it. I just appreciate having options in those moments, quite literally with the triple option. So that to me is huge.
I love a good halfback toss pass. Not one with a bunch of oop-de-oop. Not like
I do and I don't,
works,
but continue.
When it works, it doesn't really have much flash.
No.
It's just sort of utilitarian.
Yeah.
And if you can get the corner and the safety to bite and get behind that defense, more often than not, you're good for a good 15-yard gain and a first down.
The only thing I don't like about it is you are relying on a skill set from a player whose skill set is not that.
No, I understand. I understand there's risk.
The risk is you can execute it perfectly, and the easiest thing goes wrong, and that's the running backs accidentally dirting it on an 8-yard pass. And so that, to me, is something I think the degree to which you're happy and the degree to which you're disappointed are very far apart. That like, oh, it was the game on the line. You're throwing it with Felix Jones. Great, cool, awesome. That, to me, is the problem with that play, that you're taking a lot into quite literally that player's hands. But
okay, all right.
I always appreciate a leaky component. I always appreciate like there's an H-back and somebody is following this play action give attempt, and it's just an easy little flip to a tight end. Eye candy leak is my answer.
There is no better play in college football, situation aside, than a perfectly executed wheel.
Of course.
When you get somebody on the wheel, there is a greater sense of satisfaction if you're watching.
Well, and especially if you're watching from a wide angle, you can do the Lane Kiffin throwing up the hands before the ball's even released. You're like, oh, a defensive end is going to run with the running back? I don't think so, guys. I don't think so.
Nope.
That's great. I agree.
Let's go to Gary. Is Penn State the Michigan of 2023? Head coach looking to prove he can win the big one.
Yeah.
Above average quarterback with an elite running game. A stacked defense. If this isn't the year, then when? Thank you, Gary.
I don't immediately know what NFL evaluators think of this Penn State roster. I just remember going into 2023, Michigan coming off of a deep playoff run, a playoff run like Penn State just made. The prevailing thought was they're going to have like 17 players drafted. Right. I don't know if Penn State's in that spot. Maybe you do. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the first thing that came to mind upon reading this is they may need to play more like 2023 Michigan to win because they don't have any receivers right now.
Right. And Michigan had receivers.
Question.
Not great receivers, but decent receivers.
They had decent receivers, guys who had been there a while.
Mm-hmm.
They at least knew what you were getting out of them. Penn State does not have that this coming season. We got another question about what is I'm paraphrasing here, but what are some of the position groups among national championship contenders going into the 25 season that are cause for alarm? The first thing that comes to mind is Penn State's receiver room.
Yeah.
Which they had a bunch of guys transferred out. I don't know if the guys that transferred out were all that great, but there's not a whole lot left there in the coffers, and I'm a little bit worried about where that's going to go.
Yeah.
But I think there is a very obvious parallel.
Yeah.
It does feel like this is a moment that's been building for Penn State. It's felt that way for a while, but I think it feels more attainable now because Penn State did go on a bit of a run through the college football playoff, did make the college football playoff. There's a lot there in State College. Like, let's just be real. This is one of the top 4 teams in the Big Ten. They should be in the playoff most years.
Mm-hmm.
And based on what they've got coming back, if they are unable to mount a more serious charge or look as if they have taken a step forward on offense, I think it's fair to ask that question. Like, if not now, then when? Like, we've been asking that, I think, for the last couple of weeks and talking about Penn State. So Gary's exactly at where I'm at. I don't know if Michigan's the best comparison, but it's not the worst.
Texas beef is interesting with how much they lose on their offensive line and the middle of their defensive line, I believe. Texas beef is going to be a lot to replace. Oregon's got a lot on defense that is sort of concerning in this moment in terms of contenders. I don't know what Notre Dame loses or doesn't lose and how much they bring back. Ohio State's everybody on defense is a concern right now, especially I would say I haven't done a deep dive of Ohio State's too deep right now, but with what they were able to accomplish up front along that defensive line and linebacker, I believe Sonny Styles is back, but otherwise it's just so new, where at least there's some experience returning in the secondary. Ohio State up front, as well as they've recruited, that to me is just among the groupings of contenders and units, that to me stands out as something big.
Let's go to Blue Sky. USF fan writes in, how long do you think it'll be before the SEC and Big Ten move to unequal revenue sharing? Seems inevitable now that Ohio State and Georgia are going to be mad about giving equal revenue shares to Rutgers and Mississippi State. So we just talked about this. The reason that this question is popping up now is because the ACC just ratified a new deal that's going to pay out an unequal share to teams based on TV ratings.
Right.
So if you're Florida State, if you're Clemson, the teams that generate a little bit more interest, 60% of the payouts are going to be weighted accordingly and go to the more popular teams. And the conversation that we had with David Hale, I believe we asked him a similar question to this. How long is it before other big-time programs see this model and start demanding something similar within their own respective conferences? The ACC, I think, wanted to do this mainly because they wanted to keep the conference together.
Yeah.
And they were worried about Florida State and Clemson. And this is something of a stay of execution because 5-6 years down the line, we could do the whole thing over again. But at least for the time being, this is enough to keep those schools happy and drop the lawsuits and carry on.
Correct.
My sense is that if you're in Ohio State, you're already thinking about this. Like, you'd be crazy not to. You're pretty much the richest athletic program. You just won a national championship, one of the most popular programs all across college football. Clearly, you're thinking about this already. There are probably a number of SEC teams as well that are a little bit bitter that a school like a Vanderbilt's getting, Mississippi State getting an equal share.
Right.
So I think they're all thinking about it. In terms of how long will it be before it actually happens, that's a different question. And so you start asking, what are the levers that schools have to pull to try and change this system before long? How long do we think it takes to change it?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question I put to you.
So you just answered this person's question with another question, and I have to answer both of them?
Yes. I did that for you.
It's a leverage question. So in the ACC, Florida State and Clemson were unhappy, and the answer to the question of or what was them leaving. So now the question in the Big Ten or the SEC, if Rutgers or Kentucky or Vanderbilt or whoever, Mississippi State, is seen as, or those teams are seen as teams who are taking money that they haven't earned. If those teams said, or what if LSU and Alabama and Ohio State and Oregon and Michigan and Penn State, whoever, say, we want more money, and if we don't get it, or what, right? The or what seems to be a super league. And so then you have a standoff. You have a standoff of like those perceived powers saying, we're going to leave the Big Ten. We're going to leave the friendly confines of the Big Ten and the SEC where we have these great TV deals negotiated for us. And we think we can get even more money by banding together with other huge programs and other conferences and leaving this all behind. And we're willing to risk turning off the public because we feel like people are still going to watch, perhaps even more so, because they're exclusively going to see Michigan, LSU, Texas, Ohio State, Oklahoma, whoever, Clemson, every week. And so there's that standoff element. So I believe we're heading to something like that in the next decade or so. Not a full-on Super League, but a more concentrated version of the sport that's going to do its best not to turn off the general sports public by going against everything the sport has grown into these past 100 or 150 years or so. But I think that's the question is like the or what? Like, are those schools willing to risk that sort of death of recognizable sport?
The question is how long?
How long?
That is the question. So you say within the next decade or so, and I think that's about the right time frame.
Yeah, it's 2031 and 2034, I believe, or when the TV deals are up, 2030, 2034.
Yeah, I think realistically it's not until the 2030s that we could see some movement on this. The way things stand right now, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, like whoever you group into that category that's going to get the highest TV ratings in the ACC and get more of an unequal share, they are doing so to just try and keep up with some of these bigger conferences.
Sure.
They all have better payouts right now.
Yeah.
And they will continue to have better payouts. So, I don't know if you want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you're Ohio State, it's still a pretty good deal. But what it would take, to your point, is some subset of teams in the Big Ten of the SEC lumping together and trying to use their collective bargaining power to try and get a better deal for them. And I just don't know how much of an appetite there is for that right now. I think it is going to that point, though. It's inevitable that it's going to go to that point at some stage here within the next decade or so.
I wonder, though, okay, so it would be an enormous swing and enormous risk, the Super League. That was talked about briefly and immediately shelved in Europe with international football. I wonder what the actual contraction, I think that's my right word, appetite is. Because in every other major sport, we've seen very small expansion along the edges. Oh, we're adding a wild card team. Oh, we're adding a playoff round. Oh, we're adding 2 new teams. We're adding the Rockies and the Marlins. Huzzah. We've never seen any major sport in America, to my knowledge, please fact check me on this if I'm missing something, that has said, yes, we have 30 teams. We feel like it'll be a better product with 12. To dramatically cut who gets to participate in a major version of a sport. I don't know if it's happened in NASCAR. I don't know if it's happened in MLS. So you'll have to excuse me on that level. We've seen very slight expansion, occasional contraction where a team moves, like from Seattle to Oklahoma City, rest in peace. But the full-on reduction of the general mass of the sport, you would really have to sell people, because I am not a believer. This is just more of the Super League conversation. I'm not a believer on forever customers. I'm just not. And I don't think college football fully, and when I say college football, I don't know who exactly I'm talking about. Probably Greg Sankey. I don't know if Greg Sankey fully understands the college football customer. I don't know.
I don't know if he's paid to understand.
I totally don't think he's paid to understand.
The college football customer. He's paid to understand university presidents.
Exactly right.
And same is true for Tony Petitti.
But they're also paid to understand what's too far. What's too far? What are the limits of how much we can monetize this sport? And again, there's nobody in charge, so there is no right answer for this. But somebody is going to have to answer that question at some point.
Well, we are trapped in this endless cycle of pursuing more.
Yeah.
And though I think Greg Sankey's a smart guy, and I think Tony Petitti's a smart guy, I don't know if they got that muscle right now.
I don't know them. I don't know that they're smart.
I'm just making an assumption.
Okay,
I don't know
that's fine.
From Dan, he says, do Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey really think that fans are stupid enough
Oh, wow. Sub-question.
to believe that the 12-team playoff model needed to be changed because the format was conceived before conference realignment? The SEC was already taking Texas and Oklahoma when the initial 12-teamer was announced, and the Pac-12 was rarely relevant in the college football playoff conversation anyway.
Yeah.
Bit of a rhetorical question here from Dan. I have not talked to one person that listens to the show who buys this.
Oh, yeah.
Not one. Not a one. Everybody has seen right through it. I think it was a convenient line that they trotted out. I don't even think they believe it.
Right.
They're doing it more to the point, as I just mentioned, to benefit university presidents and not necessarily the fans out there. So it's not really a question of do they think that fans are stupid enough? It's do they care? And to that, I say the answer is no.
Right.
Again, the fans aren't paying their salaries.
I agree.
That's just not who they're indebted to.
I
think you know the answer to this one, Dan, not you.
Yeah,
the other Dan.
Yeah, I agree. I have nothing to add. I'm just it's a situation where we see the Big Ten and the SEC try to lay down reservation placards and do everything in their power to make sure that stakeholders are the ones who get to decide a neutrally competitive framework. Like, what? What are you talking about? It's great.
Let's go to Josh with Scott Loeffler. That's Scott with one T.
Yes.
Leaving Bowling Green for a quarterback coaching position with the Eagles and Eddie George taking over the head coaching job. Is the era of the MAC being a place for great coaching talent over? What does realignment, playoff expansion, and all the changes mean for G5 schools and the way coaches are found for P5 jobs? First off, I think it's pretty cool that Eddie George got that gig.
People seem to really like him. It's great.
I think it's a good hire.
Yeah.
I saw people on our Discord talking it up. They think it's a good hire. So I'm excited to see Eddie George back in the game, man. You know, Eddie George, like big time name from our formative years of being college football fans. So I'm cool with him getting that gig. It's probably a little bit disrespectful to him to say that there's no coaching talent, no great coaching talent in the MAC. We got to see what he can do first. But we have seen a bunch of MAC coaches leave.
Yes.
We talked about Tim Albin leaving the Ohio gig. We obviously have been talking about Scott Loeffler going to the Eagles now as a bit of an assistant here. What does it all mean for G5, Dan?
Yeah, we saw Mo Linguist leave Buffalo for an assistant job at Alabama, head job. So what does it mean for the MAC? The MAC, to me, from afar, is a conference that has super entertaining football and super limited resources, and very talented coaches realize they're up against a wall. I mean, Dion hired Kent State's coach too, right?
Yep.
That there are just going to be limits to what you're going to be able to do with MAC level resources, which is obviously different with every school. But certainly speaking, the way college football has changed at the top, there seems to be a premium on either coaches who have consistently won a ton, which is difficult on a certain level with the MAC because these programs get rated year in and year out, so it's hard to consistently win all of the time every year. And two, a lot of these top programs want guys with experience at top programs. And so the longer you are, Jason Candle at Toledo or something like that, programs say to themselves, I'm assuming, educated guess here, how could he step into this major place without recent major place experience. Now, we've had guys like Matt Campbell. We've had guys like PJ Fleck that have, joined teams and put their spin on it, put their sauce on it, whatever, their imprint, and succeed. PJ Fleck has done a, by and large, very good job at Minnesota. Matt Campbell, by and large, has done a very good job at Iowa State. But the thought is that specific level of experience something that translates to Arizona State, Colorado, Florida, right? That like you are seeing these coaches go to major places sometimes in an effort to launder or wash or gain new experience that would be more appealing trying to get that head job. So,
okay.
And the MAC just doesn't seem to have those resources to either retain, go after portal guys. It's just, you see it year in and year out that like this guy from Bowling Green, this guy from Miami of Ohio, this guy from Northern Illinois, like star level guys for those places are suddenly at Baylor or at Kansas State, whatever. And
hey, I said it at the start of last season.
There's just no retention.
I said it at the start of last season. Don't treat the MAC as if it's part of the college football universe.
Right.
Treat it as if it's its own self-contained bubble. It's more fun that way.
Agree.
The MAC season this past year was friggin' awesome.
Yes.
It was an awesome season. At one point, we had a conversation about there being a 6-way tie atop the conference and, how the hell they were going to settle all that. So appreciate it for what it is.
Like it's the Cape Cod League over the summer for baseball players. Yeah.
Absolutely. Appreciate it for what it is. But to the point here, it's just harder in general for the G5 right now.
Yeah.
It's just harder in general. Even though there is now this pathway to get into the playoff, there's also a lot working against the G5. So,
yeah, I mean, but like even in the American, even in the Mountain West, if you have a star level quarterback, it's not absurd to think that you can retain that guy, that you can retain Seth Hennigan, or that you can, Maddox Madsen, somebody like that they're not automatically going to just take that offer from Cal or from TCU or something like that. Whereas in the MAC, it's kind of a shocker if a guy like that lasts.
Let's do one or two more here, Dan.
Okay.
Joshua says, who's the quarterback or quarterbacks that disappointed you the most in 2024 that you are ready to get hyped for and hurt by again in 2025?
Is this a Dylan Raiola question? Is that no? What is this?
I don't know if this is a Dylan Raiola question. It can be if you want it to be. I've got 4 names here.
I'm ready for you.
I've got Jalen Daniels from Kansas, who threw 14, I may have looked at this incorrectly, but threw a bunch of interceptions last year.
Yeah.
12 interceptions. Completion percentage dipped under 60%. I was expecting a lot more of him. Did not work out.
Yeah.
Okay. Joey Aguiar at App State really didn't work out.
Okay.
Speaking of throwing a bunch of picks, App State had a bad season. The coach got fired, and now Joey Aguiar is off to UCLA. He's gone.
Yes.
Noah Fafita. The whole Arizona story
in
2024 was pretty disappointing, but I think we were both pretty hyped up for the fact that it was going to be Fafita and T-Mac.
But you're ready to be hurt by Noah Fafita again, now without T-Mac?
I don't know if I'm ready to be hurt again. I'm ready to be hurt by all these guys. I'm a romantic.
Okay.
You know me. I also jotted down whoever is playing quarterback for Minnesota this year. Every year.
But you weren't.
Every year.
Okay.
You don't agree with this. I can tell already.
Well, Max Brosmer's not back.
I know that.
Okay.
But just the unnamed quarterback role at Minnesota is enough to hurt me year in and year out. I feel like I have been hyped up for whoever Minnesota's quarterback has been over the last 3 years, and always on some level they disappoint me.
Okay.
Max Brosmer came a little bit closer to not disappointing me.
Okay.
But still, he did not live up to the expectations that I had for him before the start of the year. So whether it's, Zach Pyron or Drake Lindsay, whoever they go with this year, inevitably I will hype up that guy in my preseason, and I will find some way to be disappointed by them.
Sure.
By the time the end of the season rolls around. Who are those names for you?
Oh, 100% Nico. 100% Nico.
Okay.
Previously on Nico Iamaleava, it was bad against Ohio State. It was more legs than arm, obviously, and it wasn't just on him, of course. But I'm not selling my Nico stock. I'm not selling my Jackson Arnold stock. I think that's going to be a very Jackson Arnold friendly program in the way that it wasn't given receiver and offensive line health and issues and offensive coordinator issues.
Okay.
Weird to say this about a Hugh Freeze program. Likely more stable footing for Jackson Arnold than what he had at Oklahoma.
Kind of crazy, isn't it?
I'm ready to be hurt again by Malik Murphy at Oregon State. Now, that's a transfer situation. I just think there's a bunch of talent there, and his year at Duke was, at best, up and down, and with some pretty low moments. So Malik Murphy, I'm ready to be hurt by once again. There was another tip of my tongue. Malik Murphy, Jackson Arnold, somebody else, I think in the SEC. Who else would qualify as an SEC? I mentioned Dylan Raiola. I looked up
not
the list.
SEC,
Yeah,
but yeah, for sure.
Who is there? Anybody else you have? While I remind myself.
Well, I thought about Nico. I mean, I think Nico's a good answer.
Yeah.
I still think Nico is really, really talented.
Yes.
But in terms of being kind of like the prince that was promised for all things Tennessee, who's going to take them to greater heights,
right?
We just haven't seen that yet. And there are reasons for that. I still have a lot of faith in Nico.
Sure.
I still wish the Giants were around to draft him in 2026. Because I really like his talent, but in terms of getting Tennessee over the hump, to that level, it's been disappointing.
Ooh, I've got one. Aiden Childs. I'm ready to be hurt again.
Aiden Childs.
The best of Aiden Childs
is
really fun. I'm ready to be hurt by Aiden Childs and all of his turnovers once again. Ready to be hurt by Miller Moss again. Because I saw that LSU game. I saw some of the throws from Miller Moss. And there were good receivers. I think the offensive line was pretty horrible for USC at times last year. I just think with the right guy, maybe there's something there. I'm trying to think if there was anybody. Oh, here was the other one. Connor Wegman, Houston. Again, I don't know if he's got any receivers to throw to. That offensive line was truly heinous last year for Houston, arguably one of like the three worst power conference offensive lines in terms of protecting a quarterback. But I think the natural talent, and I've seen enough from Connor Wegman, be like, if it's a better situation, they hired, I think, LSU's tight ends coach as their new offensive coordinator. So they made a change there. They knew they had to make a change. I want to believe, Ty. I want to believe. So that was, I have a couple of transfer answers, Nico and Aiden Childs. I can't quit him just yet.
Here's an interesting one, Dan.
All right.
Let's go to Brian. What's the most you'd pay for an in-game regular season ticket?
An in-season game?
Yeah, in-season game.
So regular season ticket to get in.
What's the most you'd pay for a big game?
$200. I think $200.
I'd go $5.
You go $500 for a regular season game?
For a big regular season game, yeah, I'd go $5.
Like I would think about like Oregon hosting Ohio State last season. And as fun as that is, it's hard to justify if you're rooting for a team that has a playoff shot and you're budgeting your cash to be like, well,
what if you're not budgeting your cash though?
If you know that your team is likely not going to make a playoff, but it's a huge game, it's at home, you want to be with your friends.
Like you've got a number in mind. You've got a number in mind and that's your budget and you don't want to go over it. And it doesn't have to be an actual budget. Like maybe you can afford much more if you want to.
Right.
But it's just, this is a number that's stuck in your craw and you won't go over it.
Yeah, $250, something like that.
I think $5's probably the upper limit.
Oh, man.
I mean, you were with me in 2012 when it was Notre Dame against Miami.
Not regular season.
I could have bought, not regular season, but even still, national championship game, could have been last row of the stadium for like $900.
Yeah.
And I looked at you and was like, there's no way I can do that. I just can't do that.
Especially if an alternative would be go to the game, sit in the parking lot and have a giant TV at somebody you know has an RV or something like that and grill with your buddies for free. The drop-off, there is a drop-off, but the drop-off isn't dramatic enough for me to be like, I'm disappointed.
I would be interested in knowing from people out there what their limit is.
Well,
for an in-season game. You know, everybody's going to be a little bit different.
Ty Hildenbrandt, comma, wallet inspector.
No, well, you could be anonymous if you want, but I want to know what you'd be willing to pay. How much have you paid?
Right.
In order to get into some of these big games. No judgment here.
Sure.
I'm just curious. To each his own. Let's go. We'll do one more very quickly, okay?
Yeah. Are there any non-college football questions? Are we going to save that? What are we doing with those?
We can save some of those for one of our bonus episodes.
Okay, on Patreon. Okay.
But I'm going to close out with this one that is tangentially related from D. Smith.
Okay.
Your high school has decided to memorialize you as one of their great alumni for all your accomplishments.
Right there with you. Yep.
How are you being honored? A small bronze statue in the courtyard, a glass cabinet in the entryway with articles and awards in it next to your cardboard cutout, or naming the head of the English department after you, a la the Andrew Luck director of offense for Stanford's offensive coordinator.
Oh, I see. So a title of a person or a title of a department?
It's a title of whatever you want, Dan. How do you want to be memorialized at Calabasas High?
Oh, I want the courts. I want the tennis courts named after me.
So what would be your preferred naming nomenclature?
It would be the Dan Rubenstein courts at the Valley Circle Pizza tennis complex. No, I just Rubenstein courts. I don't know. I don't even know if tennis courts at a high school have a name other than those are the tennis courts.
Well, they name them at my high school after a longtime tennis coach. They've named the.
But what is it? Is it the
field
courts?
after-
Is it like the Bill Johnson tennis courts? How do they name it? Because usually there's a stadium, right? It's like Louis Armstrong Stadium at the U.S. Open grounds.
I think that's how they've done it. Yeah, they just so-and-so tennis courts.
Yeah, I would probably I would assume that there's a set tennis court at a high school. Like if you're a basketball player, that's easy. If you're a football player, that's easy. If you're, a star actor, then you have like the Hugh Jackman Theater or something. I don't know why he came to mind.
What if you're a podcaster though? That's the question.
Oh, it's AV
here.
room. Oh, it's 100% AV room.
Okay.
We lobbied unsuccessfully when we were in school and had accomplished nothing, my friends and I, within the Oregon journalism program, to have Edit Bay number 2 named after us because we felt the documentary that we edited was so pristine that
Sure.
how could you let Edit Bay number 2? I would, as a joke, at Oregon specifically, it is very easy to argue against that my career has had nothing to, it's very easy to argue that my professional career has had little to nothing to do with journalism. So naming something after me within the journalism school seems kind of funny. But if I could get a vending machine or a water fountain, that would be kind of amazing.
Like a park bench or something.
Yeah. If I could get like the Rubenstein Snack Corner named after me I think it's Allen Hall still is what it's called, where the J school is at Oregon. Like some sort of like just plaque on a vending machine. That would be great for me at the J school. Editing bay might be a little bit too far, but I would love an editing bay. But yeah, a water fountain, a couch would be great. A lobby couch.
Couch.
Yeah.
Sit
on the Rubenstein couch.
I'm jotting this down.
Yeah. What about you?
Great. I just think some sort of bronzed microphone. I don't necessarily need the cardboard.
So you
cutout.
want something for your desk?
No, I want something that's like, as he said here, in the glass cabinet. I want something in the trophy case. Maybe a picture of me and then some sort of bronzed Shure SM7B adjacent to it. I don't know.
I would see. I want something.
Believe it or not, I haven't given a whole lot of thought to this.
Oh, I haven't either. But if I were to give a bunch of thought to it, I would say I want to be there for some kind of unveiling, which you can't really do for a bronzed microphone statue behind glass. People just walk by that, whatever. But if there were a giant novelty ribbon that I could cut in front of a vending machine that had peanut butter M&Ms, that would go a long way for me. Like hire a photographer, really make a deal out of it. A couch, a drinking fountain, a vending machine, an editing bay. That to me.
All right.
A tennis court.
Why don't we leave it there? We appreciate everybody's thoughts, everybody's questions. Let us know via email, via social platforms, how you would choose to be memorialized. Also, let us know how much you'd be willing to spend on an in-game, I keep calling it in-game, in-season ticket.
Yes.
For your respective team, solidverbal@gmail.com or any of the social platforms. If you made it this far, hit follow, hit subscribe, leave comments on the episode wherever you can. We are recording this a little bit early because we are going to spend some time hashing things out in New York City.
Yes.
What we've got planned for the next couple months or so. Looking forward to seeing you, Dan. As many people are listening to this out on Patreon anyway, we are already in the city. So With that being said, appreciate everybody's support as always. For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrandt. We'll talk to you soon. Stay solid.
Peace.